So it starts with an idea. Can I turn what is obviously one of the ugliest aircraft Grumman's ever produced, with the most boring paint scheme, into something a little more interesting? A relatively simple build that's got the potential to be a showstopper, or will I do what we've all done before and bite off more than we can chew and produce something fit only for a dog? A wildcat for the bin, not the sea? Stay tuned and find out. Fancy box art, but you can't really hide that dull, monotone scheme. And when you open the box and look at the sprues though, there's some really good surface detail, both raised and recessed, with lots of rivets and some fine panel lines that should take a wash nicely. As this quick sprue tour continues, let's have a look at some other areas, particularly the wings, which are festooned with rivets, something I'll focus on later on in the build. The cockpit, which is a solid effort with raised knobs and switches, but not overly detailed, most of this won't be seen anyhow. Meanwhile the engine doesn't look too bad either, adding some ignition wires would busy it up a bit. The floats have some recessed lines and the struts are nice, a bit chunky but still well detailed. Let's begin the construction. The engine goes together very easily, everything aligns properly and no problem with fit. The propeller just sits there nice and square too, and it leads it to be motorised. The build of the cockpit was also very straightforward. No problems there. There's potential to detail this up if you'd like, especially the instrument panel, which was a little bit plain. While the fuselage halves fit solidly with a few seams to fill, the spine being the most careful to finish off with a small gap just near the rudder there, with the front cowl also needing some work, but it's not much. Only half the bottom needs doing from the fin forwards, but be careful not to lose too much rivet detail when you sand this together. So there's all the sub-assemblies ready to go, not much to it, and fit is good. There's lots of parts left over because we're doing the float plane version. There's the cockpit done. I've just put the decals on, put a matte coat on them. They're not the best in the world for the instrument dial. No seat belts. I might put a pilot in here, I might not, leave it at that. It's got a strange construction, this thing. You do the fuselage halves. I spent a lot of time getting off. That's the Steinl silver coat, that's why it's so shiny. Just done a quick paint job. It's got a weird method of construction. You build this, and then you put this big plug in there, and on the wheel version, obviously there's the wheel cut out. You put the wheel there, and then the wings slot in there. It's a bit strange. The floats, I've also primed those in the Steinl silver, so I'll make that a metallic undercoat. The struts are just dry fitted. My plan is to assemble the fuselage and wings, glue it all together, put these on and glue the struts to the wings, and then once that's gone off, take the floats off. So I can paint and weather the float separately but keep everything else nicely structurally sound, because the main struts here are super solid. That's a really solid fit. Okay, so that should hopefully work. Again, I just primed that in Steinl silver, put a Tamiya black wash and then a brown wash, and then just gave the front bit of it a blue coat. You're not going to see much of it. And with the cowl, they only give you one cowl with the flaps open, so I thought I'll paint the inside chromate yellow, whatever the hell that colour is. And yeah, again, that's nice and shiny because that's all silver, so I can chip the hell out of that. So leave it at that. I need to work out, I've got stuff all over my fingers, I need to work out the paint scheme. I'm not doing the box art, I'm going to do something very, very, very different, so stay tuned. Alright, the fish is officially, pardon the pun, almost finished. The floats are only dry fitted, so when I pick this up it's going to all fall apart. I've also not glued the canopy on yet because unfortunately you can't have the rear canopy slid back. It sits proud. It only goes in the closed position. I may look at trying to trim this area here to make it fit, but you know, we'll see. Gun sight's in, I just need to paint the lower bit of it. I've masked the canopies just with masking tape, Tamiya masking tape. Let's just take this apart and I'll show you some of the problems and good things with the kit, so as I pick it up it's going to fall apart. There you go, there goes one float. So what I did is I dry fitted the float pieces, the struts, to the floats, and then glue them in permanently to the, let's bring this up here so you can see, the joins are very vague. The engineering is very suspect. They give you little location marks here for these back struts, but nothing for, it just goes onto this little thing here. This float's actually attached quite well. Talking about construction, getting the wings on quite fitted right was a bit of an issue. There might be a small step there. There was a gap down here on both sides which I filled with Mr. Surfacer. Underside was a little bit better. It's good enough. The main issue was this central plug that you put in here, where the wheels normally are. I think I said that on the last bit, and trying to get that aligned so that there isn't a step here all the way across this massive seam line. See if you can see it all the way over. And there was a little hole there I couldn't fix. I had to do a little bit of sanding, so I think I've lost a bit of the rivet detail here. I might bring that back when I'm after priming. And then the join here, I'll try to get the camera to look at the join. Are you going to see it there? Yeah, I think I've got it right. I think what they do is they give you location plugs and some tabs on the inside of this piece, and what they end up doing is they end up squishing the whole fuselage out. So I just remove them, so I've got a bit more room to move. So the fit's okay. It's good enough. It's not Tamiya, but it's good enough. I'll just take the cowl off because the prop's just sitting there like that. And this is press fitted. This is actually pretty good. So it's just press fitted in there. They give you one locating lug there to the midpoint there, and that's just friction fit. And same with the motor. The motor's just sitting on like that. So that's not too bad. I mean, out of the box, it's all right. Not going to do much else to it. Other fit issues are the central needed fin, the extension it needs for the float plane. They need a little bit of Mr. Surfacer. There's a gap on one side, but not on the other. But apart from that, not too bad. So the next stage is I'm going to prime it, but I'm tempted to glue those floats on permanently just so I don't have any problems gluing them later. Yeah, so let's go to the next stage. Right, so my idea starts with applying a Tamiya pink primer from a rattle can. I then masked off some of the pink using the Neo masking fluid. I was trying to do some multi-layered chips here, and you'll guess the scheme I was going for pretty soon. I then applied the aluminium from MRP on other areas, including the floats, and I covered these with a mid-shade of red after taking the masking fluid off, and it didn't really work. So, back to the drawing board. I covered the whole thing again, almost everything, in MRP aluminium. And this time I went with a preshading approach. I covered most of the panel lines with a hull red and a dark red sort of shade, with some green fading mottling in between, you can see there. The ailerons were taped off in their original pink, come back to that later, as was the tail, where I painted the winglets in yellow. Here's the initial result when covering with a coat of red. Some pretty stark results as usual with preshading. I added some variation with some different shades to break it up a bit. If we jump to the overall finish, you guessed it, it's Boba Fett's scheme. I always like to do something a bit different. So I painted the fuselage in a light green with some dark green panels, and the struts were done in NATO black. Here comes the chipping. I used hairspray technique this time, which I find much more controllable. I'm finding it more confident with that technique. Particularly when you want to go heavy on the wing root or the access panels. I use the same hairspray technique on the cowl, as you can see there, which I faded with dark blue and red underneath the black. The floats were pre-shaded and faded with dark blue on the panel lines and mottled green in between. And then I heavily chipped them. Moving to the prop, same effect, fair bit of chips, a few scratches, again using the hairspray technique. All assembled with a nice gloss coat, it was ready for some panel line washes. And then I found some spare decals with claws and a hunter to do the whole, even a 69 on the tail. So using oils, I dusted the wing roots and I added some exhaust staining. I did this, it was overdone, I should have used more control and maybe some different colours. and it had an effect, but I didn't really like it in the end. It seems to have muted the colours a little bit. I'll hold back next time, particularly on the underside where I couldn't really get the exhaust plumes quite right. I've got a Hellcat I'd like to heavily weather next, so this was really good practice. Using some washes as well, some green wash, I added a moss line to the floats, as you can see there, to show it's been in the water for a while, and it's all done. So I hope you enjoyed that little experiment. It was a fun little build, and I'll see you all next time.